everyone. Welcome back to another episode of But Why the Podcast. And today we are talking about a superhero who put on his cape and cowl 80 years ago, Batman. As always, I'm Kate, and I'm here with Adrian.
Hey, how's it going?
And Matt.
Hello.
And I'm going to let people sit for a little bit to think who is on this podcast episode as our guest. You can probably guess. You get a gold star if you do. But it's Lizzie Garcia.
Hi.
Hello.
I wore my Batman sweater.
She is, in fact, wearing her Batman sweater. For the uninitiated, maybe this is people's first time listening to us. Who are you and why are you qualified to talk about Batman?
I am the editor and social media manager of butwhythopodcast.com, so kind of the website side. I'm probably qualified to talk about Batman because I only talk about Batman. I've basically reviewed most of the Batman reviews on the site are from me. Most of our Batman content in general is from me. So yeah, he's kind of my favorites.
And if you ever read a video game article by her, there is probably a Batman on that list.
I'm still angry you wouldn't let me put him on the couples one. It's true though.
Yes. So she is probably the most qualified person we know to talk about Batman, other than people who have written Batman or been Batman. So
That's a long list these days.
It's a high honor. Wow.
List.
I was going to say that's a high honor, and then Matt just took that from under me.
So our first question, I'm going to be leading us through this adventure. And our first question is, what's your favorite Batman? Which I know before we started this, Matt was like, that's a very broad question, but let me add some confinement to it. What is your favorite Batman in television, movies, or comics? Your very favoritist Batman.
Well, I guess if we're doing comics, you have to kind of go by comic runs. At least for me, that's how I would see it. I feel it's so hard. I always say I love Batman Hush because that was the first Batman story I read. And I think it has a lot of elements to a really good classic Batman story. So that would probably be my comic one. In regards to, should I do each?
Oh, I
or just do one?
You to do each.
Okay, cool.
Everybody else can do one. I expected you to have one for each and some runner-ups.
Because I do. I just didn't want to my favorite TV iteration is Batman the Animated Series. Without hands down, without a doubt. And then favorite movie is Dark Knight. I still that's still my favorite comic book movie, and I feel like people put me into that group of people who just can't get over that movie and should probably live their lives, and they're not wrong. But yeah, and then I guess video game is easy because it's just Arkham. There's nothing else.
Adrian?
Batman Beyond. Can I count that? Does that count?
Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, that counts.
Okay, yeah. Then yeah, Batman Beyond. Terry's that was I think I watched that one more heavily than I watched Batman the Animated Series. So that might be why. And child nostalgia, I guess. But I don't know. I just like Terry a whole lot, and he deserves his own movie in real life.
You have a favorite Batman movie?
I never really thought about what my favorite Batman movie is. I guess The Dark Knight, but I'm also in the camp of it hasn't aged super well. I can't go back and rewatch it because it's just too long and it's just too long. It's just too long.
Say, Martha.
All right.
No,
see y'all next week. I'm out of here. Bye. I mean, give me Batfleck's warehouse scene over most of the action sequences in the Dark Knight trilogy, Nolan. But yeah, no, don't bring that up again, Kate, or I'm gonna leave because it makes me viscerally angry, and now I'm sick to my stomach thinking about how much was wasted.
I'll go next. My favorite Batman is pretty much any Batman that Kevin Conroy has voiced. He is Batman. He is Bruce. I totally am cool with other voice actors as Batman, but Kevin Conroy is really just he's pinnacle for me. So like my favorite Batman movie, and I think the best Batman movie is Mask of the Phantasm. That's favorite movie.
Oh, I
Batman.
didn't think we can go animated movies. Oh man,
It's a
I didn't
movie.
think about
That one is
movies.
a movie.
Yeah,
It's a solid movie. And I will die on the hill that is the best Batman movie ever made. But my favorite live action Batman is actually Michael Keaton Batman '89, because that is a beautiful movie that actually holds up. And outside of Eartha Kitt, Michelle Pfeiffer is like the best Catwoman ever.
whoa! Halle Berry would like to speak with you.
No, she wouldn't. She knows. Halle Berry knows what she did.
Yeah, my favorite cartoon, just get real specific. My favorite my favorite television Batman is actually the Batman at the very end of Justice League Unlimited when he helps Ace die. That
Oh
is
man,
my favorite Batman.
why you do this, Kate?
Because it's one of the most touching moments.
I like how we were supposed to just pick like a favorite iteration. And Kate's over here like, I'm gonna break down an exact scene. Like, okay, do we not even
Well,
get
that's
to
my
go
favorite
around here?
iteration. I think that specific Batman in that specific moment is probably one of my favorite renditions of the character, because he's cold and calculating the entire time up until that point, and I don't think any other hero would have let her die on her own terms and would have been with her while she died. Like, everybody else would have tried to physically save her, whereas Batman understood. So
Batman's a good dad. Send tweet.
is he though?
No.
Okay, I'm done.
Whatever. I'm gonna pick episode 25, season 7. My favorite iteration. For the
I'm
last,
sorry.
2 minutes out of the 22-minute show. So obviously, probably if we're gonna go with this, obviously the animated series would probably be my favorite one. Obviously, I will say for at least the first 2 to 3 seasons of the weird random 2004 The Batman is actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's very awkward, and then the show gets terrible, like the last season or so. But it's actually, I will give it a runner-up there, just because I don't think a lot of people realize that exists. I'm gonna go different in the movie-wise, because I still like Batman Begins, and I think it actually holds up way better than The Dark Knight. I get why
Yeah,
people
you're
like
right.
it.
I think we had this
Dark-
conversation. Yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's a
How do you like-
very vastly underrated movie. I think people enjoy it, but people obviously forget about it and just talk about The Dark Knight, like Lizzie said. But I think it holds up actually better than The Dark Knight does.
I didn't come here to be attacked.
You've been on this podcast before. You know how it goes.
But
So,
no,
so we got no love for the late great Adam West Batman.
so
The OG.
Aw.
It's not that I don't have love for him. That's not how I would describe it.
Yeah, I think and we'll get into it as we talk about Batman, is there are so many different types of character that he has played through the years, both psychologically and just how he's been written. Personally, I just prefer the darker pieces of Batman, because those are more relatable. So
yeah,
You
I
like
mean,
bat nipples.
I
and
do
bat
like
credit
bat
cards.
nipples. I do, but they're not my favorite. But I will
You're right.
fight
You're
for
right. I'm
bat
just giving you all
nipples.
right. I'm sorry.
I know your favorite's apparently a character that doesn't even play in the movie that's your favorite.
Yeah, I broke it down. I'm sorry that I came prepared.
You literally talked about Catwoman, but said Batman '89 is your favorite movie.
Yeah, because Batman '89 is my favorite Batman movie. Mostly because of
Catwoman's in
Michelle
the
Pfeiffer.
second one, didn't she?
No, she's in the first one. She's in Batman. She's in the first one. Isn't she in the first one?
I don't think she is.
I'm pretty sure she's not.
She doesn't get there until Batman Forever.
No, she gets there in the second one, I thought, with the Penguin.
Well, put it as Batman Returns.
Oh my gosh.
You know how I always talk about don't talk about stuff that you're not a subject matter expert in? Yeah, this is one of those moments. But okay, so moving into this, Batman has been around for 80 years. This is your disclaimer. We're not going to get into all of the Bat. We can't actually do that in one episode. I deleted about 4 pages of show notes because it was just too much. So we're going to focus on some of the more popular iterations of Batman, and we're only going to talk about Bruce Wayne. I'm sorry, Adrian. I love Terry too.
It's all right. We'll get it in the part 2, Kate. We'll get it.
So we're only talking Bruce Wayne Batman, and we're not going to focus on any of the Robins or
Yay.
any of the other pieces of the Bat family. Unless
The worst
they
part
are-
of Batman.
Lizzie's face right now.
She's so hurt. She is so hurt.
You just attacked her children.
Those are my babies.
Nope.
You'll walk into your house and talk shit about your children, Matt.
Don't have any, because like the good
I'm
Batman
nice
don't
to
have
your
any.
dog, Matt.
The dog's barely self-sustaining.
All this is to say, this is a Bruce Wayne Batman episode, so please do not add us for not talking about the Robins, the rest of the Bat family, or anything else that I did not say that we were going to cover today.
You can at me because the Bat family is terrible and trash.
Oof.
I'm at you.
Let's rock and roll.
Yes. So history. So Batman comes around in early 1939, and after the success of Superman in Action Comics prompted editors at National Comics Publications, which would then become DC Comics, to request more superheroes for its titles. In response, Bob Kane created the Batman. The Bat-Man is how that was spelled. After creating Batman, Bill Finger gave assistance in guiding the character design. Finger suggested giving the character a cowl instead of a simple domino mask, a cape instead of wings, and gloves. He also recommended removing the red sections from the original costume. So essentially, Bob Kane came to them and was like, "Hey, here's my cool new hero, the Batman." And Bill Finger was like, "This looks terrible. We're going to make this into something that we can actually sell." And that's how we got Batman. Finger said he devised the name Bruce Wayne for the character's secret identity. To quote him, Bruce Wayne's first name came from Robert Bruce, the Scottish patriot. Wayne, being a playboy, was a man of gentry. I searched for a name that would suggest colonialism. I tried Adams, Hancock. Then I thought about Mad Anthony Wayne. He later said his suggestions were influenced by Lee Falk's popular The Phantom, a syndicated newspaper comic strip character with which Kane was also familiar. And if you don't know who The Phantom is, go Google Billy Zane, The Phantom, and it'll come up. Possibly the
Can we
worst
talk?
comic book movie.
Can we talk? I've never seen this original design. This is bad.
Oh, it's so bad.
It is so bad.
Do you want to give the play-by-play, Adrian?
He like literally he has wings and he's in a red suit. All they kept was the belt, and like, that's it. Like what is this?
So is that like the first drawing of the Falcon?
I think this might be worse.
It's worse.
If I'm
Way
if I'm being honest,
The true hero of Batman story is Bill Finger for not publishing whatever the hell Bob Kane turned in.
Yep.
yeah.
So Kane and Finger drew upon contemporary 1930s pop culture for inspiration regarding much of the Batman's look, personality, methods, and weaponry together. As an aristocratic hero with a double identity, Batman had predecessors in the Scarlet Pimpernel, created by Baroness Amushka Ortsky in 1903, Zorro, created by Johnston McCulley in 1919, and like them, Batman performed his heroic deeds in secret, averted suspicion by playing aloof in public, and marked his work with a signature symbol. Kane noted the influence of the films The Mask of Zorro from 1920 and The Bat Whispers in 1930 in the creation of the character's iconography. Finger, drawing inspiration from pulp heroes like Doc Savage, The Shadow, Dick Tracy, and Sherlock Holmes, made the character a master sleuth. So these are kind of all the things we love about Batman and defines a character, and it's actually really grounded in this pulpy comic book history. Anything to add? Any questions?
I was gonna ask what's a sleuth, but I didn't want this to turn in one of those situations where people
Kinda
think I
did.
don't know what sleuth means. But it just seemed like I don't know if everyone knows what a sleuth is who's
A
listening.
detective.
Yeah, see, there we go.
Yes.
That's why he's the world's greatest detective / sleuth.
Yeah, I think sleuth rolls off the tongue a lot easier. I like that.
We wouldn't be talking about a comic book character from the Golden Age if we didn't talk about somebody totally and royally getting screwed over in their creation. So like we've mentioned with other comics, creative rights sucked in the Golden Age. Kane eventually ended up signing away ownership of his character in exchange for, among other compensations, a mandatory byline on all Batman comics. This byline did not originally say Batman created by Bob Kane. His name was simply written on the title page of each story. This meant even if he did not do anything with the character, his name was on them. Just pretty baller move. The name disappeared from comic books in the mid 1960s and was replaced by credits for each story's actual writer and artist. And then in the late 1970s, when Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster began receiving a created by credit on the Superman titles, along with William Moulton Marston, who created Wonder Woman, Batman stories began saying created by Bob Kane, in addition to the other credits that accompany them. Guess who didn't? Bill Finger. Finger did not receive the same recognition. While he had received credit for other DC work since the 1940s, he began in the 1960s to receive limited acknowledgement for his Batman writing in the letters page of Batman number 169. For example, editor Julia Schwartz names him as creator of the Riddler, one of Batman's recurring villains. However, Finger's contract left him only with his writing page rate and no byline. At the time of Finger's death in 1974, DC had still not officially credited Finger as a Batman co-creator. So the first time you actually see Finger receiving credit is in 2015. So in 2015, DC revealed that Finger would receive credit for the first time in 2016's Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice and the second season of Gotham, after a deal was worked out between Finger's family and DC. Finger received credit as a creator of Batman for the first time in a comic book in October 2015 with Batman and Robin Eternal #3 and Batman Arkham Knight Genesis #3. The updated acknowledgement for the character appeared as Batman created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Do you know
That's gonna
why
suck so much.
Well, I was going to say, are we going into kind of why they
you can go
gave
into
it back?
We can.
There's a really great documentary about it, which I highly recommend, called Batman and Bill on Hulu. But basically, this journalist had kind of heard from multiple comic fans who had been fans for years, older comic fans, that they had met the writer and creator of Batman, and it wasn't Bob Kane. So he spent years researching it, and he finally found Bill Finger's granddaughter. And because he found a family member, they were able to go to DC and say, hey, you kind of owe our family money. So that's why it's on there. It's not because DC actually revealed it. It's because somebody made them, like legally speaking.
I'm not surprised by that at all.
Yeah.
It's gonna suck so much. Your reveal comes out or whatever on Batman vs Superman.
It is
I waited,
he was
60 years for this.
He was also in Batman Eternal #3, which is not a bad comic run, and Arkham Knight Genesis is also not a terrible comic run. So
What
he's
are your
got that
thoughts
going
on
for
Batman
him.
versus Superman?
It is hot trash. I hate it. Throw it away into the depths of the sun. Get that shit out of here.
You got the second season of Gotham, like anybody remembers that.
Gotham is actually a really good TV show. It's just
No,
not
it's
a
not.
Batman show.
show.
Huh?
Yeah, I was about to say it's just not really a Batman.
Just a police
No.
drama that they suck people in like you because they threw some Batman.
Because
names
they
in there.
did really good with the Penguin and the Riddler.
Cool. Everybody likes Law and Order. We know this already. Everybody likes.
So you're saying that Gotham was just Law and Order, but make it Batman?
Yeah.
That is the best sales pitch I've heard for Gotham.
I mean, what do we have? What, like, people love what? Brooklyn Nine-Nine, even as a comedy. We have. You know how many police dramas there are? There's like 25 Law and Orders. What's the other one? Blues or something like that? Boy Blues or cop thing that retired. That was on for like 10 years in the early.
Blue
in the 90s.
Bloods?
No. What the hell is the name of that show?
I think that is also another cop drama. There's like the Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, Chicago, all the other
ER.
things.
That's some thunder.
Oh, that's loud thunder.
Sorry if you heard that.
So all of this like makes me think back to our Ditko episode where like, oh yeah, Stan Lee pretty much pushed Steve Ditko out of a comic, but at least Steve Ditko has always been credited for creating Spider-Man with him.
Yeah.
It's NYPD Blue.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Not relevant.
On from 1993 to 2005.
This is not an
But
NYPD
Batman.
Blue episode.
Well, we could do one. That show's actually highly rated and actually won a lot of awards.
What I was gonna say was in regards also to just Bob Kane as a human being, he's not great. Like later in his life, he would sell art that he did not do, but he would sign it and sell it as if he did, and he ended up getting in like trouble for that.
Oh shit.
Like Bob Kane does a lot of terrible things later on.
Yeah, it's the 70s.
What does
But
I
everybody
feel
was
like
on-
anytime like somebody does something bad, Matt's just like it was the insert decade that isn't the 90s or 2000s here and say cocaine.
I mean, that's pretty much where I was going to say acid instead of cocaine, but I mean,
I
we're
don't
probably pretty
think-
close.
Bob Kane did that.
It's the
but-
70s and the 60s.
Case in point. There it is.
Just
Check
throw out a
and
random
mate.
decade.
It was the 20s. It was clearly cocaine.
That was marijuana.
True.
Yeah, so now that was very depressing, we're gonna talk about Bruce Wayne, who is equally depressing. It's kind of his shtick. So Batman's secret identity is Bruce Wayne, and a wealthy American industrialist who, as a child, witnessed the murder of his parents, Thomas and Martha Wayne. Sorry for saying the name, Adrian.
His parents died.
You didn't know that?
Batman's
pa-
parents died.
Heroes' parents have never died.
Batman's. I didn't even know that.
Batman's
I think I
Uncle
need to see
Ben
it.
also died.
I think I need to see it 6 more times before I get why he's so angry.
So this ultimately leads him to creating the Batman persona and seek justice against criminals. Wayne averts suspicion by acting the part of a superficial playboy, idly living off his family's fortune and the profits of Wayne Enterprises, his inherited conglomerate. He supports philanthropic causes through his nonprofit, the Wayne Foundation, but he's more widely known as a celebrity socialite. In public, he frequently appears with the company in the company of high status women, which encourages tabloid gossip. Although Bruce Wayne leads an active romantic life, his vigilante activities as Batman account for most of his time. I'm gonna take that as that just means Batman sleeps around a lot, and they couldn't put that.
Yeah.
So there was a documentary called Batman Unmasked, and it went all into the psychology of the character. And behavioral scientist Benjamin Carney notes that Batman's personality is driven by Bruce Wayne's inherent humanity. That Batman, for all its benefits and all of the time Bruce Wayne devotes to it, is ultimately a tool for Bruce Wayne's efforts to make the world better. Bruce Wayne's principles include the desire to prevent future harm and a vow not to kill, but that's kind of loose. A little bit.
Loopholes. There are loopholes.
You let them die. You don't kill them, right?
If someone falls off a roof, that's gravity. That's not on you.
Exactly. Don't have to save you.
In the
long
Arkham
as they
games,
don't
if
kill
you
you.
push somebody's head into an electrical box, that was electricity. That's not on you.
All they do is they duck and they cover in the fetal position. They just go, oh, and then they're done. It's either still alive.
Yeah.
It's
As long as
not
they make
on
a
you.
noise, it's fine. Yeah, as
Yes,
long-
which
doesn't matter if they're maimed for life. You didn't kill them.
that was the thing that we got to see. We got to go to Kevin Conroy's Batman panel at Wizard World a while ago, and Kevin Conroy went on for like 10 minutes about how Batman the animated series could have been darker, but the rule was just to make a noise. So everybody lived and everybody was fine. Even when they fell out of a helicopter into water.
That's gravity. That's not on Batman.
A water is like blankets.
That's
pillow.
no, it's not.
That's how it works, Kate.
It's a wet blanket.
It's like jumping on a waterbed.
Oh dear. Never take any advice from this podcast, please and thank you.
You can do it for science, so I will record the data.
Oh my god.
If you still have a waterbed in 2019, I think we need to talk anyway.
So Bruce Wayne thinking about Batman Damned.
Stop it.
Bruce Wayne believes that our actions defined us. We fail for a reason, and anything is possible. Batman's primary character traits can be summarized as a wealth, physical prowess, deductive abilities, and pretty much obsession. Obsession and money are his superpowers. The details and tone of of Batman comic books have varied over the years due to different creative teams, and this also does impact Bruce Wayne as a character as well, although not as much. Ultimately, the driving force behind Bruce Wayne's character is always his parents' murder and their absence, which makes me mad because Alfred gets no love, and it bugs me. That man is his father. Another one of Batman's characterizations is that he is a vigilante. In order to stop evil that has started with the death of his parents, he must sometimes break the law himself, but never kill anybody. Although manifested differently by being retold through different artists, it's nevertheless that the details and the prime components of Batman's origin have never varied at all in the comic books. The reiteration of the basic origin events holds together otherwise divergent expressions. The origin is the source of the character's traits and attributes, which play out in many of the character's adventures. And Batman also speaks over 40 different languages, which I don't know why that was important for the Wikipedia page, but the Wikipedia page listed that Batman speaks over 40 languages.
It's important. Can verify.
So before we head into the but why those, take a quick listen to this. So now that we're going to go into the but why those, the very first one has to be that Batman is an everything. And when I say everything, I do absolutely mean everything. If you are one of our Patreon patrons, you will actually get to see my pretty graphs that I have in our show notes that show us that.
They're not that pretty because you cut off the top, so you can't even see what we're looking at.
Matt!
I took an entire class on how to make graphs. I know this.
I didn't cut off the top. That was just the title of the section. The title of the graph is right there.
Okay.
Anyway, so Finder.com.
Yeah, where's your deductive reasoning skills, Matt?
Finder.com did a study, and that's using study loosely. They just collected a whole bunch of data and put them into really, really pretty Tableau tables. And Batman is the top superhero by number of movie appearances. Batman has appeared in 12 movies, which is more than any other superhero. The second of which is Superman, and the third is Wolverine, with Spider-Man coming in with Spider-Man and Iron Man tied with Wolverine. But for perspective, Batman has been in 12. The next closest is Superman with 8.
Are these just live action?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah.
I was like, there's no way.
Yeah, this is just live action. I think if you end up putting in the other ones, it gets real weird, but that would be a great thing for Matt to do with his tableau skills. So the next piece is top superheroes by number of TV appearances. Batman is again at the top with, I believe it's 27. He has been in 27. He has made 27 TV appearances. And the next closest is Superman, Robin, not shockingly, and then the Hulk.
The Hulk? That's kind of surprising.
Lou
It's really
Ferrigno.
not.
Oh, that's why. You're right. Never mind.
That, and for some reason, people really liked the Hulk for a long time.
I don't
know
understand.
why.
I don't
I
either.
still haven't figured it out, but apparently he was popular a long time ago.
Hulk smash.
We don't even get that anymore.
Lou Ferrigno, he was like a world star in bodybuilding. So
Well, I know, but even then, we still get a bunch of like random animated like movies and TV shows with the Hulk. is
because
always in there.
we want to see everybody fight the Hulk. Hulk v whatever.
So
just
that's
automatically
actually
makes me wanna
Batman?
watch it.
Yeah.
That happens, doesn't it?
Has
Man,
Batman ever fought the Hulk?
I don't think Batman fought Captain America.
I don't know.
Captain America won. We don't talk about it.
I thought he fought the Hulk one time or did something like that, only because I remember
Yes,
somebody.
Batman has
because-
fought the Hulk.
Because I remember because somebody goes, Batman punches the Hulk, and the Hulk like goes, oh, and like falls over, and people kept going, how does that happen?
Yeah, so in
Because he's
September-
Batman. What do you mean?
Well,
how
we
does
know
happen?
that. I'm talking about for all the other people.
So in September of 1981, in DC Special Series Volume 1, number 27, Batman did indeed fight the Hulk.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
I'm so surprised.
Are you?
Are we?
And it ends with Bruce Banner losing all hope once again of curing himself from his living nightmare. That's what the synopsis says.
That's what I love. This Batman has killed all hope in the Hulk.
That tracks.
Bane might have broken the Bat's back, but Batman breaks people's spirits.
Yeah.
Accurate.
And women's hearts.
Also, as of 2018, based on these appearances, this is what people have used to make Batman the most popular superhero. I don't know how much that really plays, but we'll get into why Batman also holds other things.
So, what do you mean by most popular superhero? So, just based on appearances? Is based on money?
It's based on appearances. It's not
Okay.
based on money.
'Cause we know
but
who wins when money.
yes, that has to do with licensing, and that is further down in the notes. But yeah, so Batman is the most popular superhero based on appearances everywhere. Again, if you're a Patreon patron, I have all of these notes to my sources, like a good academic, in our show notes. You can check my stuff. Anyway, so we're going to talk about some of the things that Batman has been in because he's been in everything. It first starts with the Batman television series starring Adam West, which premiered in January of 1966. And it was inflected with a camp sense of humor, and the show ultimately became a pop culture phenomena, running for 120 episodes. Fun fact: The Who actually recorded the theme song for the Batman show in their 1966 EP, Ready, Steady, Who, and the Kinks even performed the theme song on their own 1967 album, Live at Kelvin Hall. That may mean nothing to anybody, but my dad listened to that music growing up. The Who and the Kinks are very, very big British bands. Ultimately, the popularity of the Batman TV series also resulted in the first animated adaptation of Batman that we see in the Batman Superman Hour. And the Batman segments of the series were repackaged to make its own solo series, The Adventures of Batman and Batman with Robin, the Boy Wonder. These ran for 33 episodes between 1968 and 1977.
How long were these episodes? You got 33 episodes in a 9-year period.
I have no idea. From 1973 to 1986, you have Super Friends, which was the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, and I watched the hell out of it. I loved it, and it has some of the best Aquaman stuff. But that was his next appearance. And then we come around to 1992, which is with what almost everybody said was their favorite Batman. Well, half of us said was our favorite Batman, Batman the Animated Series. This series received considerable acclaim for its darker tone, mature writing, stylistic design, and thematic complexity compared to previous superhero cartoons, in addition to winning multiple Emmy Awards during its run on TV. This also has some of the most iconic like drawing styles for Batman, and it's one that has followed suit in a lot of the Batman TV shows. Kind of set the bar. The series' success, and I had to bring this up. The success of the series led to the theatrical film Batman: Mask of the Phantasm in 1993, as well as a whole bunch of other superhero spin-off shows such as Batman the Animated Series, the new Batman Adventures, which sucked when you watched the Batman the Animated Series on Amazon Prime. They actually put the new Batman Adventures as the last season of Batman the Animated Series, and it's awful.
It comes off so bad.
That's
Yes.
They count them like as season, what is it, 5 and 6 or 4 and 5 or something like that?
I think it's 5 and 6.
But yeah, it comes off like so bad because you're just watching. It just ends, and then all of a sudden they start the next season. You're like, yeah, and then you're like, who are these people?
Yeah.
What happened?
And that Harley and Ivy are terrible in that one, so it sucks.
It's hard.
It's real bad. Of all of these, can somebody take a guess of who voiced them? Of who voiced the Bat in all of these iterations?
The best person.
Kevin Conroy.
I was right.
Which I have my Batman pop that is signed by him, and I love it. And if you love Kevin Conroy, one of our contributors for the website is actually at SDCC right now, and he got to interview Kevin Conroy. I'm not the least bit jealous at all. I promise.
We love you, CJ.
The futuristic series Batman Beyond also took place within the same animated continuity that you have here, and it featured a younger Batman voiced by Will Friedle with the elderly Bruce Wayne, who was still voiced by Conroy. And it's actually crazy when you think about it, because if you think about how Batman sounds in the various iterations of the character within just this continuity, Conroy has incredible range. Because old crotchety Batman does not sound the same as younger Batman.
He has a little roughness to him.
He's seen some shit.
Yeah.
So after that, you end up having other series, and you have new Batman actors or new Batman voice actors introduced. You have The Batman in 2004, which Matt referenced at the start of the show. You have
First
Batman.
3 seasons are good, or 4 seasons, and then the last season or so, you're like, this is awful, and you can tell it's getting canceled.
That's fair. And Batman was voiced by Rino Romano. Batman, the Brave and the Bold.
Also a good show, but the last season once again suffers very badly, and you could tell they were ending it.
That's accurate.
That came out in 2008, and Diedrich Bader voiced Batman in that one. Beware the Batman, which I had never heard of, but
it has really terrible animation.
Okay, that's why I've never heard of it, and I'm actually.
This
might it also was only 1 season.
Yeah, this might be the only one that I can't recall.
That's what I'm here for.
Oh, that is ugly.
Send it, Kate. I want to see if I actually watch this one or not.
It's horrible. It was him and Katana, oddly enough, running around, stopping crime, looking like a hot mess.
Okay, so I've seen 1 episode of this, I believe, and I was like, this is awful, and that's it. So I remember the design, and that's about it. Yeah, no. Nope.
It got 1 season.
Yep.
It was on around the same time as Young Justice was on Cartoon Network.
Yep.
This is awful. It was like somebody wanted to play with Tim Burton's toys but didn't know how to use them.
Fair.
So that happened with Anthony Ruvivar voicing Batman, and then you have Gotham, which we've already established isn't really a Batman show, even though it does feature a 12-year-old Bruce Wayne who is played by David Mazouzis. Probably not pronouncing that right. I apologize. Not trying to mispronounce it on purpose. That started in 2014. And then you have Titans, which in season 2 will feature Ian Glenn as Bruce Wayne.
I believe the finale, I don't know if it
has
had
a stunt
him,
actor.
but okay. I was like, Batman is in the finale, but I also.
But you
that's
have to
really
make it to the
weird
finale
Batman.
first.
All right, I don't need to be called out right now.
I don't think you're the only person that didn't make it to that
I
finale.
know a lot of people that didn't make it to that finale.
It's so bad.
And if you don't know who Ian Glenn is, he is Ser Jorah Mormont in Game of Thrones, and he's going to be Bruce Wayne. Also, to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the character, Warner Brothers aired the television short film Batman Strange Days, and that is on DC's YouTube channel that you can watch. I haven't. I kind of only really go back and watch the Bruce Timm animated adventures, Justice League Batmans. The next piece we're going to go into are all the damn films that he's been in.
That apparently Kate does not know, so we do need to go into some of the villains.
Yes, we do. We really do. So 1989's Batman has Michael Keaton as Bruce/Batman, and in 1989, Warner Brothers released the live-action feature film, and this was directed by Tim Burton, and ultimately the film was a huge success, not only top grossing film of the year, but at the time, it was the 5th highest grossing film in history. I don't know where it stands now. I probably should have box office mojoed that.
You don't need to worry about it. All the top that Jurassic Park was the last one that was standing in top 25. That was like before the 90s or before like 2000 something, before 2009, except Titanic. And once it's been pushed out already. It's a long ways down now.
Well, the cool thing is
inflation's a thing.
Yeah.
Yes. The cool thing is that Batman also has the most Oscars out of any superheroes.
Yeah.
This film won the Academy Award for Best Art Direction. And then you move on to Batman Returns in 1992, which is really the movie that I meant.
Yes.
And then you have Batman Forever, 1995. And then we have the amazing addition to the comic book movie pantheon, directed by Joel Schumacher instead of Tim Burton. And oh my God, Adrian left. I really hope he wasn't doing that on purpose. And replacing Val Kilmer with George Clooney, you have Batman and Robin in 1997.
If I ever open a bar, I'm going to have a drink called the Slippery Bat Nipple. Like the shot, the slippery nipple, but it's Bat Nipple.
That movie is terrible. The movie is
so good.
I think Batman Forever is a little underrated.
I like Batman Forever.
That's really underrated.
Yeah, I was like, Batman Forever to me is not that bad of a movie.
Yeah. Oh, and that one had Val Kilmer as Batman.
Yes. But no, between because also had Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones, and that one's not too bad. But Batman and Robin was just too much over the top.
So I think that Batman and Robin, Batman Forever has a lot of camp in it.
It does. And then they went even more with Batman and Robin.
That's what I was going to say, and that's why people don't like it, because Batman and Robin is a camp extravaganza. But I will say this. I still think that Batman Forever's Poison Ivy is one of the best visually looking Poison Ivies I have ever seen. Screw you, Arkham Knight games. I want Uma Thurman.
You don't like her in her underwear with just some leaves? You didn't like that?
I did.
So I didn't not like that. I think Uma Thurman, Dark Lady buns, Poison Ivy is better.
I don't really like Arkham's Poison Ivy, and I do love Uma Thurman's Poison Ivy.
It's so good. Can you I just want Uma Thurman as Poison Ivy again, but in a movie that critics will like.
So But no,
See,
like I said, Batman Forever does definitely a lot more camp than the other ones, and then I think it was not bad and it's fairly underrated. But yeah, they definitely go way over the top for Batman and Robin, which I think is just so bad. And then I just really hate what they did with Mr. Freeze, especially if you watched a lot of the animated series.
yeah, that is fair. That is fair. Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze is probably not the best idea, and the fact that Mr. Freeze is probably the most tragic Batman villain,
Yeah,
but Clayface is the best. Just saying.
so Clayface
out
and Arkham
here.
is pretty cool to watch.
Clayface is cool to watch all the time. Like I want Guillermo
No,
del Toro
he
to
is
be
not cool to watch in the Batman 2004.
None of those villains are good to watch because they
Yeah, they
all
make
have
it look
very
so
weird
weird.
designs.
They have very
Like the
terrible.
Joker.
Joker has
Oh, God.
dreadlocks.
I know, it's so bad.
Okay, and like webbed feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I am very thankful for Batman and Robin for giving me Poison Ivy because she's good. She's real good.
You're canceled.
Adrian, do you have feelings on Batman and Robin?
I have no strong feelings either way. I'm not in either of the camps. Like, it's fine, but it's also Batman and Robin. But I can understand. I can understand the love when it comes from a place of love. But if people want to make fun of it, I'm also down to make fun of it too.
So fun fact, all of that is one continuity and the exact same version of Bruce Wayne, even though there are 3 different actors.
It's a very common thing.
That sounds about like comics.
Next you have the reboot of the Batman series with 2005's Batman Begins, directed by Christopher Nolan and starring Kristen Bale as Batman. This is where you get deep, gritty Batman voice. And
I
then
can do it.
can you
Yeah.
say you're Batman?
It like hurts my thyroid every time, but ever since I got thyroid disease, I can do it really well. Swear to me.
Wow.
That was actually really good.
Wow.
I told you. The best part about being chronically ill is now I can do a Batman voice.
That's a real good Batman voice. Oh gosh. Okay, so next, you have The Dark Knight in 2008. And this film set the record for highest grossing opening weekend of all time in the US, earning approximately $158 million. That's since been crushed. And became the fastest film to reach the $400 million mark in the history of American cinema with 18 days of release.
Also been crushed.
That's been crushed. Thank you, Marvel. The record-breaking attendances saw The Dark Knight end its run as the second highest domestic grossing film of all time with $533 million, bested only by Titanic.
By Titanic. That's just kind of mean, Kate.
I didn't mean it. By Titanic. I need to enunciate. And the film wins 2 Academy Awards, but the biggest one here is this is the only comic book movie to win a actual award outside of the genre award. So we've talked about it in other episodes before, but the genre awards are like sound design, script adaptation, costume design. It's all of this stuff that you don't really give for actors because people don't believe genre movies are movies or are films and deserve it. That was different with The Dark Knight. And Heath Ledger ended up winning the award posthumously for his portrayal of the Joker, which I think when a lot of people think about the Joker now, as much, I think that there are 2 that come to mind. One, the amazing Mark Hamill iteration, but also Heath Ledger's are probably the 2 that everybody thinks about, and all of us just want to burn Leto to the ground.
So the sad part about this is I really like Heath Ledger and stuff and everything, but I still wonder if he still would have won this award if he didn't die.
I actually think that all the time.
Yeah, I think it a lot. Especially the way people like talk about it and they're crazy about it. I'm like, I get it, it's really good. I'm not saying I'd have to go back and look at the year, but I really feel he won this because he died, sadly.
But I also, I mean, take this with a very big grain of salt. When I rewatch, like my favorite part of The Dark Knight is obviously Heath Ledger. Like his Joker makes me laugh. Like I think he's so funny. He's a very funny Joker. He does a lot of uncomfortable things that is just like unsettling, and I think that's what's really good in a Joker story. I don't like Joker stories that are violent for the sake of being violent. I like it to kind of have this idea that Joker's always a step ahead and it is a psychological game. And I think Heath did that really well.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think he is great and stuff. It just, like I said, I wish he would have been alive so I could answer that question.
I will also say that Heath Ledger's Joker influenced the comics far more than I would say Jack Nicholson's Joker did. Like the comics we have after Heath Ledger's Joker all very much have elements of his Joker, particularly when you're talking about Death in the Family, which is a Scott Snyder story. That's a very heavily influenced by Heath Ledger's Joker story.
This is why we brought you on.
This is what I'm here for. I've been waiting for this moment, I told you.
And then after that, in 2012, you have The Dark Knight Rises, which in my opinion is one of the worst closings to a great trilogy.
I don't hate that movie actually, but I don't think that's Bane.
I don't like it, but I don't hate it. There's too many issues with it that bug me.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't hate it, but for a trilogy that had a lot of freaking steam and like doing, like new and different things, it's just like, boom.
It hurt the overall picture. I will say that. I agree with that.
That third act is butt cheeks.
You're not.
It's so butt cheeks, man.
not
It just
wrong.
I remember seeing it in the theaters, and it just the whole third act. I was just rolling my eyes. It was just so. You should use your name, Robin. Oh my god! It's just so bad. It's so bad.
I actually
They shoved Easter eggs all up in there.
The reveal is bad. Oh man, it was good until it was bad.
I mean, I was up to it until the time jump, and then I was like, this is terrible.
The Robin thing at the end made me want to punch something.
Yeah, it's like
I was like, bitch, you ain't Robin, sit down.
Yeah, it's Martha levels bad of like line delivery. Like why was that made it through testing and people were like, oh yeah, but put that in there. Let's do it. That's pretty good. I like it.
So after that, Batman sees his return to the screen in 2008. Batman also starred in a whole bunch of direct-to-video animated films under the DC Universe Animated Original Movies banner, with Kevin Conroy reprising his role of Batman in a lot of these, but not all of them.
Bruce Greenwood is usually their other Batman.
Yeah. And if you have never been a fan of like watching animated stuff, I feel like you should still go watch the animated movies with Batman in them. They're really good. DC takes like adult animation and just animation in general to a whole nother level.
There's a lot of love in those movies, and they're usually pretty panel for panel to comic runs that they're based on. Particularly, I mean, the one that always comes to my head is Batman Under the Red Hood. There are moments of that movie that are just like that comic run. And that's probably my favorite Batman animated movie. Even though it's not Kevin Conroy, it is Bruce Greenwood, but Jason Todd is my child.
Jensen Ackles.
Jensen Ackles is so good.
He needs to be Red Hood already.
Yes. Old gritty Red Hood in like the style of Logan, please.
That would be really good. After that, we also have another animated adventure in the Lego Batman movie in 2017, which has Will Arnett stepping into the role. I really like it.
I love Lego Batman. Yeah,
I do too. I still prefer Troy Baker as my Lego Batman, though.
Troy Baker is a very good Batman. But oddly enough, Troy Baker has also been Joker.
Oh yeah,
Also true.
That's true.
Troy Baker's out here just like all the Batman characters. He's gonna take Harley Quinn next.
Well, the funny thing is when we were at Wizard World, people asked Kevin Conroy what he thought about Ben Affleck's Joker, or sorry, Ben Affleck's Batman, and all he said was there's only one Batman and it's me. And people were like, "Oh yeah, that's a joke." And he's like, "No, I really mean it. It's me and sometimes Troy Baker."
Yes. Yes. He's not wrong.
He did acknowledge Christian Bale a little bit.
Oh yeah, he did acknowledge Christian Bale, but it was like
But that
after
was
the
it.
fault.
But that was it. It was him, Troy Baker, and Christian Bale. That was it. No one else.
Nobody else.
Nope.
No one else mattered. Then we have Adrian's favorite iteration of Batman in 2016 with Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, directed by Zack Snyder.
Look, I like Batfleck. I thought he was fine. It's that goddamn movie as a whole is so bad.
I fell asleep.
So I do think that that's what sucks, because I actually think Batfleck and Henry Cavill are really great
Good
in their
casting.
roles.
They were fine. Like I was not distracted at all by the fact that Ben Affleck was Batman. I thought he was buff, kind of.
He had a poofy suit. After that, you have a cameo in David Ayer's Suicide Squad.
Movie's
And
awful.
then it's so bad. It's one of my most hated DC films. And then you have the last of Batfleck in Justice League in 2017.
Which
I
actually
love Justice League because I love trash.
Okay, now we're done.
Hold
with
on.
the Bruce Waynes.
Wait, what?
I want to change my Batman answer to Pete Holmes in the College Humor spoofs
Oh gosh.
because he's fantastic, and it's the
I
reason why I
mean-
can't take the Batman voice seriously anymore.
You didn't like
I
my
mean-
Batman voice?
I liked your Batman voice, but as soon as you said it, all I thought about was Pete Holmes and him yelling at Superman or yelling at the commissioner, like, "Where's the commissioner? Where's the commissioner?" It's just Pete Holmes is the best Batman.
Swear to me.
I swear it. I swear it.
All right, come on, let's go.
Okay, now we have the Batman games. So Batman video games have been around since 1986, but because we are already over an hour with this episode, I'm just going to jump to the ones that matter, which are the Arkham games. Batman Arkham Asylum in 2009, Batman
Amazing.
Arkham City in 2011, Batman Arkham Origins in 2013,
Money grab
and,
that was terrible.
and Batman Arkham Knight in 2015.
Press
actually
F to
really
hug Jason.
And if you read Lizzie's review of one of the Batman books where the Arkham Knight shows up, it's
Detective Comics 1001.
there we go. It's just like 2 paragraphs of her saying you can't use a name that is already established for another character, especially when that character is better than what you put in your comic.
I'm not wrong.
You're not. It's probably one of my favorite like rants I've ever seen you write. It was well presented. So as with most animated Batman productions, Kevin Conroy provided the voice for the character in these games, excluding Arkham Origins,
Of course.
because they went for a younger Batman who was voiced by Roger Craig Smith.
Arkham Origins was also not written with the help of Paul Dini. The other ones had assistance from Paul Dini.
You can clearly tell the other 3 had care, and Origins was literally a money grab.
So I'm going to let you two talk about this now. Go.
I mean, as I said, like Paul Dini had a lot of work on these, and a lot of the Easter eggs in these games have to do with the animated series. And I'm one of the few people who loves the Riddler missions and like puzzles in this game, because a lot of them are literally just like, do you know who this Batman villain is? And I do. And so I get
I
them
loved
right.
those.
I
Those
love them
Riddler
so much.
pieces were the best damn thing. I love them so much.
I liked the racetracks a lot less because I was like, this isn't a riddle, but okay.
Those racetracks were hard.
Real
Like,
hard.
Can I just fly? But probably the worst thing were the weird ones where you had to like grapple and slingshot.
I hate that.
Slingshot yourself all
Yeah.
around the map in like a minute time, which was like you just want to throw your controller.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And also, it's just, that's not the definition of a riddle. So there's that. But
So the great thing about these games, especially the first one that introduced, was obviously probably not like necessarily groundbreaking per se, but it was like the combo system that they used, where if you just and it wasn't button mashing. Like a lot of people thought it was button mashing, but it wasn't. It was well timed. You had to think. You had to do everything to do the combos correctly, and then when they kept adding on to like the different abilities you could do a lot of cool stuff with it, which was really fun.
Yeah, the combo building system in there is it's real good. I think it's also it's not the first, because I know some hack and slashes uses a similar combo building thing, but I think
Right.
that like this type of complex combo building, that I think this is what ends up defining a lot of those beat 'em ups later, like after this game
Yeah.
comes out.
That's
There
what
were
I'm
a
saying. I knew
lot.
it wasn't
Yeah.
the, it
There
wasn't
were-
the first, but I knew it was like the most polished, and it's definitely not like a traditional hack and slash.
I will say a lot of games after this, whether they were superhero or not, very much emulated that combat system.
I feel like Assassin's Creed attempted
Assassin's
something
Creed
like
Syndicate
did,
was the first one
Yes.
I thought of.
because they start doing the combo system too with the timing. It doesn't work as well.
No. It's not
but-
nearly as difficult because the timing is not as difficult.
Right.
Also, Batman Arkham is one of the few games that I don't play on easy because I'm actually really good at the combat, because I have played those games probably each one about 5 times.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I used to sit there and do the combat challenges to see how high we could get, because it was a lot of fun. Then you had to like see if you can do 7 different moves within your combo, and it was definitely one of those you could kill, or quote unquote kill, knock out like 40 to 50 people without
Loophole.
being touched. Yeah, but that's probably one of the biggest things I take away. Obviously, the open world that they did with actually with Arkham, and then when they went to Gotham, it was really well done.
Those games also have really, I mean, outside of kind of origin story ends up falling flat when you compare it to the others, but those games have very good stories. Like, they stay really true to what makes a Batman story, and part of that is because of people who worked on the animated series' involvement in the games, but it's just there's so many elements that just work for a Batman story, one of which being Batman has to take on multiple villains at a time. Like, Batman is the type of hero where it's so much better when you have like him up against 5 or 6 of his rogues gallery at a time.
I also just really love the character designs in these games.
Yes.
Yes.
I love
Like-
Scarecrow.
Yeah,
Scarecrow's
definitely
really
by far my
good.
favorite. Those missions are great.
I have a
and they're very
tiny
messed up.
Scarecrow figure, and he sits next to where my pills are in my kitchen because he's technically a doctor.
I also just think Joker is super creepy and perfect in it
Oh, he's so
as
perfect.
well. It's really good. So in addition, before Telltale died, and ruined a lot of its workers' lives, it released Batman: The Telltale Series, which is an adventure game which changed the Wayne family's history as it is depicted in the Batman mythos. A sequel titled Batman: The Enemy Within was also released in 2017. Telltale's gone, so that's no longer a thing, but it's actually a really good game. I think I've only Huh?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I've played the first 2 episodes, so I haven't finished it, but it's really good. So all of this is to say, Batman is the most licensed DC character. While he isn't the most profitable worldwide, he is the most profitable for DC, by quite a bit. Now, unfortunately, Marvel dwarfs it. But that's because of the MCU. That being said, Batman is just under $600 million that he brings in global retail sales of licensed products, which is about 300 million more than Superman.
Take that, Boy Scout.
So moving on, I do want to talk about one of the most popular runs of Batman, and probably one of the ones that gets mentioned the most. Lizzie, feel free to correct me if this is wrong. But The Dark Knight Returns.
No, I would say that's correct.
Okay. So The Dark Knight Returns, if you don't know, was written by Frank Miller. It's a limited series that ran in 1986. And it returned Batman as a character to his darker roots, both in atmosphere and tone. The comic book, which tells the story of a 55-year-old Batman coming out of retirement in a possible future, reinvigorated interest in the character. It had kind of waned before this. Batman got a little repetitive. I wonder
Because
why.
for a while, Batman was written like an 80s action star and not like Batman.
That's fair. So The Dark Knight Returns was a financial success and has since become one of the medium's most noted touchstones. The series also sparked a major resurgence in the character's popularity right after that. And that same year, Dennis O'Neil took over as editor of the Batman titles and set the template for the portrayal of Batman following DC's status quo altering miniseries Crisis on Infinite Earths. O'Neil operated under the assumption that he was hired to revamp the character, and as a result, tried to instill a different tone in the books than had gone before. One outcome from this new approach was the year one storyline in Batman 404 to 407, which came out in 1987, in which Frank Miller and artist David Mazzucchelli redefined the character's origins. Writer Alan Moore and artist Brian Boland continued the dark trend in 1998's Batman: The Killing Joke. Yeah. Any questions? Lizzie, want to elaborate on anything?
I do not like Dark Knight Returns or The Killing Joke. So, unpopular opinion, but there it is.
Why? Specifically for The Dark Knight Returns, because that is like the touchstone.
I think I don't. It's one of those things where there are certain comic writers where you're like, this is good, but it's not for me. Frank Miller is one of those comic writers for me. To put a more modern example would be Donny Cates, who has written Venom. He's written Cosmic Ghost Rider, things that are very, very like critically acclaimed. But I'm just like, this is a little too bros for me. Like, it's just kind of a similar thing with Frank Miller. Like, it's just his writing style and particularly his art style is just not for me.
That's fair. Anyway, the largest part of Batman, and the reason, and this is the but why though here, that everybody talks about him the way they do, the reason he's become entire classes at universities is because of the psychology behind him. Batman has been the subject of psychological studies for some time now, and there have been a number of interpretations of the character's psyche, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that there are so many variations of the character himself, but the fact that they all revolve around the death of parents leads to a lot of scholars and psychologists to look into different forms of trauma and grief, because all of these different characterizations result from the same core. In Batman and Psychology: A Dark and Stormy Night, Travis Langley, who we got to meet at Wizard World, that was cool. Travis Langley argues that the concept of archetypes, as described by psychologists Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell, is present in the Batman mythos, such that the character represents the shadow archetype. If you don't know at home, this archetype, the shadow archetype, as Langley defines it, is a person's own dark side. This has also come up in there's a edited volume called The Psychology of Zelda. This is a lot of the shadow side also comes up in like doppelganger stuff. If you saw Us, that's also putting that archetype to use. And it's not necessarily an evil one. Sometimes it is just the dark. And for different people, that can be different things. Rather, this is something that people hide from the outside, and sometimes it's concealed from both the world and from the person themselves. Langley argues that Bruce Wayne confronts his own darkness early in life, and he chooses to use it to instill fear in wrongdoers, with his bright and dark sides working together to fight evil. Langley uses the Jungian perspective to assert that Batman appeals to our own need to face our shadow selves. He also specifically taught a class called Batman, and when asked about it, he said, "I could have called it something like the psychology of a nocturnal vigilantism, but no, I called it Batman." And that was probably one of my favorite quotes from a scholar ever.
That's great.
Ultimately, when it comes down to it, we're really drawn to Batman, and I would say not so much Bruce Wayne. I know that a lot of people have different variations on it, whereas Bruce Wayne is his true self, and then there's Batman. I actually think it's flipped, where
I think Batman is his true self. And I also really like the moment in Batman Beyond where he's like, I knew it wasn't me in my head because I kept calling myself Bruce. And Terry's like, well, what do you call yourself? And he just stares at Terry and he's like, Batman, obviously. Get out of here, kiddo. But I do agree, and I think I've said it probably in every Batman review I've ever written, that good Batman stories deal with the dichotomy of Batman within himself. And
Yeah.
I think a current book that does that best is The Batman Who Laughs, because The Batman Who Laughs is literally the worst iteration of Batman. And Batman constantly has to decide how far is he going to toe the line to stop what is basically himself.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, that's kind of the same idea with the Hush story. Even though Hush is a different character, it still feels like a darkness within Bruce Wayne.
So now some iterations have dealt with the issues of Batman becoming to Batman. But ultimately, Batman matters by showing us our own potential. That's been one of the things that a lot of the psychology has done, not necessarily the psychology of Batman, but the psychology of why people like Batman. Because ultimately, Batman is an ordinary guy minus the money. He made himself into a superhero, and through discipline and determination and commitment, he made himself into the best. And I think that that's really important to think of, mainly because I think of all the memes from the animated series where it's people rushing off and it's like Batman in an elevator, or it's like Wonder Woman like carrying Batman by his cape. Because like he can't fly, he can't rush and fly off. He has to outsmart everybody because, I mean, granted, I'm gonna bring it up. Being a bat has some privilege. In outliving
Listen,
everybody.
It's fine.
But it's one of those things where if you think of heroes, Batman's only weakness is Batman.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Bane proved that.
Yeah.
And Bane proved that by making Batman the only Batman and kind of forgetting his humanity, which is something Chris Sims also mentioned, who is a comic book writer, and we recently spent all of Heroes Con talking about Batman. But it's one of those things where, and if he gets too much in his head and he thinks that he is only the myth, and it's okay that everybody else thinks he's a myth, but if he starts believing it and he loses what's around him, which is Alfred and his Robins and the Batgirls and, you know, everybody else, that's when he really is almost dangerous. And that's also kind of proven in Dark Knight's Metal, which all of those iterations of Batman have lost everything. They have lost everything, so now they are just all Batman. There is no humanity left.
So Lizzie, when are you writing a Batman comic?
Oh gosh, I don't even know if I would want to, but right now I'll stick to writing like my Robin, my threads of here's the Bat Family as Parks and Rec gifts, here's the Bat Family as energy drinks. I need to do The Office.
Oh, you do.
I think that's the next one on the list. That's gonna happen before I write a Batman comic.
All this is to say, there's this duality to Batman and this identity to Batman that also makes him this stark other half to DC. So when you think of DC, you think of Batman and Superman, sometimes Wonder Woman, and where Wonder Woman is empowerment and Superman is the all-American. Batman is something entirely different. You know, Superman is just as much Clark Kent as he is Superman, and that's one of his important pieces. But Batman being Batman and detaching himself from his life as Bruce Wayne is his important piece. So he kind of balances the scales of what DC has to offer in that way. A lot of the times writers of both of the stories for both Batman and Superman have contrasted the two, and interpretations vary depending on writer, the story, the timing. Grant Morrison noted that both heroes believe in the same things despite the day and night contrast in their roles. he also notes an equally stark contrast in their real identities, like I just said. Um, T. James Musler's book Unleashing the Superhero in All of Us explores the extent to which Bruce Wayne's vast personal wealth is important to his life story and the crucial role it plays in his efforts as Batman. But it's weird because, like, I know that Batman is a billionaire, but for some reason when I think of Batman, I actually don't think of money first, which is real weird. And I may be alone in that.
I don't know if I think of money first. When I think of Batman, I just think of Batman. Not even Bruce Wayne, just Batman, because Bruce is second. And because Bruce is second, the money is second, even though he's funding all of this. But yeah.
Beyond that, I wanted to bring up Batman as a symbol. Superman is a symbol of hope. Wonder Woman, like I said, is a symbol of empowerment. And then Batman has crafted himself into being a symbol of fear. Batman doesn't want people to be inspired by him. He wants people to be scared of him because he exists not to inspire the little kid. He exists to make the criminal, like, pee themselves and run away and stop doing crime. That's what Batman exists to do. Ultimately, Batman dresses like a bat not because he likes people, but because he hates people. He wants everybody to be afraid of him, and that's actually really important to his character. We've already talked about how big his moral code is. But I do want to say that this is where we bring up the Robins. And Lizzie already kind of mentioned it in the psychology piece. The Robins are what ground him and keep him from going full on anti-hero.
Which is why after Jason's death, he went bananas. And Timothy had to be like, hey, buddy, you doing okay? Hey, man, I'm kind of worried about you, bro.
And then they're like, who's speaking? We don't know of a Tim.
Anyway, I only brought this up to say is that Batman kind of sits on this edge of losing his humanity and having his humanity, and ultimately the Robins act like a hinge that ground him and move him. So depending what happens to his Robin at the time usually depends on how deep off the end he's gonna go. And that's why Gotham criminals love either killing or kidnapping Robins. Ultimately, when it comes down to superheroes, like hard superheroes that aren't described as anti-heroes a lot, Batman is the most vigilante out of all of them, and I would argue Batman, at least, like, for a long while, has been an anti-hero, but that's just me.
I think he's, like I said, I'll say for anti-hero, I do think he probably falls in the anti-hero thing. Like I said, I think we've just gotten lazy writing anti-heroes, per se, just because it's just kill or don't kill. But
yeah, that's fair. I do think that's definitely how people define it.
yeah.
Moving on, we're going to end with how many Batman books there are, because Batman, you know those numbers I brought up about licensed products and all the money he brings into DC? In May, this was the last time I saw the top comics, a book with Batman had, I think it was like 7 of the top 10 spots for sales.
Yeah, that tracks.
Because Fertilli is
it was all just me.
So I had Lizzie get together a list of Batman books that aren't Bat Family books. So Lizzie, you wanna
They're
explain?
current from day of recording, so don't at me if you listen to this and you're like, what about this book? And I'm like, day of recording. So we have Batman, which is the regular solo run, currently written by Tom King. Detective Comics, The Batman Who Laughs, which is a miniseries with Scott Snyder. The Batman Last Night on Earth, which is also a miniseries with Scott Snyder. Batman Beyond. Batman Curse of White Knight, which will be out soon, which is a sequel to Batman White Knight, which I mentioned earlier. And then Batman Universe, which is also being released in Walmart's under Justice League Giant and Batman Giant.
What about Batman Damned? Did that already wrap?
It was only 3 issues, so it wrapped.
That's right. Batpeen.
Batpeen was not as long as you expected.
Yeah, so anyway, that's a lot of Batman comics. That's not taking into account that the first 3 issues of Deceased were all about Batman.
I feel like, though, there could be more. Like, I expected there to be more. So, if there's more, I'm not going to be angry. Like, I
You're
just want to
not really angry if
clarify
there are more
that.
Batman
I
comics.
just want to clarify that.
Yeah. So that's all we had to say about Batman. I guess we want
That's
to.
not all we had to say.
Okay.
That's just all we had time to say.
This is all we had time to say. We will be back with a part 2, 3, and 4 where we go into the rest of the 80 years of the character. Because unlike the Superman one, we care about this one. Yeah. So final thoughts. Adrian?
Batman's cool. I like Batman. Batman does things. No, I like Batman. I think my gravitation towards Batman in the DC universe is because he's like human, but he could still dumpster everybody if he really needed to. When I think of like my favorite Batman scene of like Bruce Wayne, I think that Justice League Doom scene is like really good. And it always sticks in my mind of like how badass Batman is, and it's that scene where he's like, if y'all step out of line, y'all catching these hands. And that's just baller. And I like baller characters. Sorry, you're not getting like a whole soliloquy out
That's
of me
fine.
because
That's
we're like
fine.
at 2 hours
That's
and
fine.
You're
I'm
fine,
sure
Albert.
Lizzie's gonna nail it. So
Matt, that's why she's going last. Matt.
Yeah. Obviously, we brought on Lizzie into everything. Batman is one of my favorite characters. I do enjoy Batman. Don't really read comics, so I don't really care about a lot of the comics. But as far as like investing in media and games and stuff and other types of, I guess, platforms, I've definitely had more than my fair share of Batman. Kind of like all the topics we talk about, the psychology is fascinating and everything else of what just happens. But yeah, I can see why people like him. It's great. There's a reason I wish we would get. I'm kind of excited for this new announcement for the new Batman movie. I know people act like they're tired of Batman, but then you look at all the numbers and you're like, no, you're not. People just say they are. They're not.
Oh yeah, I
And-
forgot to say that Edward is playing. Robert Pattinson is playing Matt Reeves' Batman.
He
Yeah,
went
so
from
I thought-
vampire to bat.
I've thought about this more and more, and I'm kind of excited to see what he does.
I am too.
I am
At
too,
first, I didn't like
actually.
it, but the more I've looked at it and seen stuff, I'm like, I'm excited to see what happens. But yeah, I wish we could talk more, but we've already done more than our fair share. We could definitely keep going on and on.
Well, Lizzie has at least 3 more podcast episodes to guest on. A Batman's episode, or a Batman villains, a Batman Robins, and more Batman.
And more Batman.
I will not be on the Robins episode.
What? You don't like them? I would never have guessed that you don't like the Robins.
Bat Family is the worst thing that ever happened to
You're the
Batman.
worst thing that ever happened to Batman.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really say anything that hasn't been said already. I love Batman because when I look at it, one of the reasons that I have loved Marvel over DC was because Marvel's heroes were extremely flawed compared to DC's heroes, and then there was Batman. And Batman, that's why I've liked him. I think that I've grown to be a bigger Batman fan over like the past probably like 2 years, 2.5 years.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
It's more Matt than Lizzie, but yes, Lizzie, you also contribute to it. Honestly, it's the animation. I love animated Batman movies. I love animated Batman. I love Kevin Conroy. And ultimately, and we didn't talk about them, but I'm always going to be a Batman fan because of his damn villains. Like, DC has always had the best villains, in my opinion, compared to Marvel, and that's because of Batman villains. A lot of the time. But no, I hope Kevin Conroy comes to this year's Wizard World, because I want to meet him again. But yeah, no, that's kind of it. Lizzie? So I'm going to say this beforehand. Give your soliloquy, and then tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay. I would say the reason I love Batman is, of course, what we've gone into, where he has kind of this darkness about him that's unexplained. He deals with trauma in a way I think we all kind of want to deal with trauma. His story is constantly kind of going between a revenge fantasy and trying to live past his revenge fantasy and be more than it, but failing to over and over and over again, and not understanding that he is kind of the reoccurring variable in that, where it's one of those things where, you know, you are your own worst enemy. And I think Batman stories do that the best. So I think that's kind of what I've always been drawn to him about. So I will obviously continue be reviewing Batman stuff, and you can find me and all of my Batman work on butwhythoughpodcast.com. You can find me on Twitter, where my entire Twitter header, which despite being But Why Though, Kate made fun of me because it's all Batman. And that is at Lizzie Lynn Garcia.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lizzie, for coming on and imparting this Batman wisdom.
Thank you for having me.
As always, you can find us at ButWhyThoughPC. We're most active on Twitter. And if you want to support the show a little more and get to see these crazy long Batman show notes, which also includes like 2 pages that I did not cover in this episode, head on over to patreon.com/ButWhyThoughPC. You get access to that at $1 and help support the show. And you can find me at OhMyMythRandier on Twitter. Adrian?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SuperRuse93, SUPERRUSE93.
Matt?
Like Batman tells the rest of the Justice League, I do not have to do this because I'm a part-timer.
Oh my god.